Rapid Media presents Rapid Media TV.
Jeff, this question's from David Nicorelli. He's a wilderness lover of wilderness system kayaks, but he's looking for a boat that he can stand and fish in. Which wilderness model do you recommend for standing and fishing?
Any of the rides, also the Commander is a good option for standing. I'm mostly in the ride 135, which is a good standing option. The elevated seat helps a lot in that regard, that you're already up a little bit.
Right.
I think how the advantage of the Commander is a lot of people who are not as secure with it, at least initially, is that they have contact points, not just your feet, but on the sides of the boat coming up and touching the side of your leg. I think it's a mental thing. I think once people figure it out, they figure out the balance that three-chine hull is gonna, they learn to trust it.
Right.
Then it doesn't matter nearly as much as that initial, it is sort of a crutch knowing that, you're touching the boat in 4 different places.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's important to maintain at least 2 and sometimes 3 points of contact to stay stable in the kayak. Next question to Drew.
Let's do this.
Drew, back on the tournament scene, but from a different angle. I know you run several tournaments. A lot of people out there are interested also in maybe starting a local tournament or, getting into starting a tournament like that. What are some things that you've learned that, might help people get their own event started?
Yeah, I would think that, if you're trying to do your own tournament, first of all, obviously you have to have a good platform out there to reach people. So if you don't have a website or you don't have a Facebook group or you don't have a forum that you're a part of that you can really get that group out there, then you're probably not going to be successful. You have to have that platform and that stage, first of all, to get the message out. Secondly, plan it way in advance. Plan it way in advance so that people can adjust their schedules accordingly. Take a look at the other tournament trails that have already been established. Phil just talked about them. There's a lot of them out there, the IFA, we've got the Jacksonville big tournament, a lot of them in California, the Gimme Shelter, the Albion, we got some nice ones out there. Look at when those dates are, plan around those, then actually build a nice little, little package, a one-pager, something that just explains what are you going to do for the sponsors if they contribute to your tournament, because, a lot of people do just go to have fun, and that's kind of what most kayak fishermen at this point are going to have fun because there's not huge dollars, but they still want to win some prizes. And the beauty is if you can just get a few sponsors to get on board and be a part of it, then they're actually going to go promote your tournament for you, and they're going to help because they have a big following on Facebook and whatnot. So take advantage of those resources. Next thing is just make sure the rules are very clearly defined and you have to stick to them 100%. Before I was fishing full time, I was a director of campus recreation, and I put on tournaments, intramural sports for students at universities and ran sports leagues. And you just got to make sure your rules are very clearly stated, very spelled out, and think like a cheater. Think exactly like a cheater. Like, what can I do to break these rules? And then think like that, and then put in all the rules to make sure they don't. Look at other tournament rules and kind of steal from them. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't patent tournament rules, but make it very, very simple when you're just starting, and those would be my main points. Just keep it simple, do all those things, and just get out there and show people a good time, really, and you'll be successful.
That's cool, thanks.
Yep.
Coming to Jim with the next question.
Add anything to that? It's also if you have good food. It can be a lousy tournament. If there's good food at the tournament, people love it.
Jim, we've watched you travel all over the world in the kayak fishing show. First of all, I wanted to ask you, what's a good, easy travel destination for American kayak anglers? If you're interested in traveling overseas, checking out some foreign fishing opportunities, what would you recommend as an easy destination for kayak anglers?
Well, of course, there's so much great fishing domestically,
right?
And it is blowing up. I never really thought of big game kayak fishing in Florida. They were doing mainly flats, and now those guys are killing it there. So we can't forget domestic. Guys are killing it. Probably one of the easiest and least expensive is to go down into Mexico. Mexico is very affordable. People are afraid to go to Mexico. It's safe, particularly if you're down in Baja. The southern Baja, I do guided trips down there. There's other people do. It's inexpensive. It's close. You could drive if you wanted down the Baja Peninsula, and you have the potential of catching the fish of a lifetime a quarter mile off the beach. So southern Baja, the East Cape region, really, and it's really where some of the big game kayak fishing got started. Right. Dennis Spike was doing some trips down there, and then I started guiding down there about 13 years ago. And of course, our friends to the north, Canada. If you like, the muskie and northern pike, I've had incredible trips up there. Costa Rica starts to get a little bit more expensive, but there are some great destinations. And then the main thing is, if you're doing that, is just make sure you're researching. Either go with a good organization or somebody that, a lodge or whatever that has kayaks, and that's the main thing. Do your research. But the beauty of it is with all my travels and now meeting so many people around the world is just seeing how this sport is growing globally.
Yeah.
I mean, I regularly talk to people in Portugal, in France, in Spain, that want us to come over and go kayak fishing with them. There's places all over the world if you want to do it. And if I could only go back to one place every single year, I'd probably go to Panama.
Yeah.
I mean, it is as good as it gets.
A little follow-up on that too. What's one thing that you just got to pack along with you that you got to take? What's something you've learned in your experiences to
extra
don't
rod
leave
tips.
Extra rod tips. Yeah.
Extra rod tips. Line, lure, a backup reel or two, and if you're a kayak angler and you kayak angle a lot, you probably have good equipment. You probably have a nice paddle.
Right.
Travel with your own paddle, because if you show up at a destination and you have to use a 5-pound rental paddle, you're not. If your idea was to be on a kayak fishing trip,
right,
you're not going to be happy if every day you have to use a rental paddle. Werner, they make a 4-piece Kamano, so a nice high-end paddle, but in 4 pieces, super easy to travel with. And then if you want to take it to the next step, bring your own seat and bring your own PFD, because those 3 things are the things that are going to make you comfortable on the water.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. I can't use any other paddle of mine, so I know that must be like coming all the way down here to Jeff for the next one, so I can pass it down. Puff, that. Jeff, you did a great piece in Kayak Angler a few issues ago about fishing with kids. A lot of our readers wanted to know more about that. What are some suggestions you have for taking your kids out fishing?
You become a kid again.
Yeah.
I'll give you for instance. As soon as I get back on Saturday, I'm taking Sawyer and Cooper to the Susquehanna River, and there's a rope swing that we're hitting, and that's a priority. The fishing isn't necessarily the priority. We got to go off that rope swing, 7 or 8 times before we get to fishing. So, yeah. And that's the cool thing about having kids is you get back to the stuff that you did when you were a kid, and you just play.
Right.
If you're doing stuff that you did when you were 7, 8, 9 years old, and you're teaching them the fun stuff that you did back then, the fishing part of it is going to come.
Right.
I think there's definitely a big risk in burning kids and trying to cram your passion down their throat, and they pull back. And I think I recognized that early enough, and I backed off, and we take the gear, and I knew that it was starting to take when I'd turn around and we hadn't been fishing for a while, and my younger son picks up a rod, and he's chucking it out there just on his own catching a fish, and I'm like, okay, that was his idea.
Right.
It wasn't my idea first, it was his, and that's it's and in some kids it's not, it may never be there, and certain people are like that. I can always tell about a person if they're, especially with kids, if they have that innate desire to capture, whether it's a bug scurrying across or toad wrangling. If a kid is going after a toad, you look at him and you're like, you may have never had a rod in your hand, but someday
natural born catcher.
You're gonna get it because you want it. You're on it. So
I've dealt with a lot of kids in my charters, and I can tell you one thing. One of the things that I've done is I take small nets, because they've got an attention span of about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
They get tired. Even if you're catching one fish after another, they get bored of that. I will take them up on shore. They'll go look at hermit crabs. They'll build little, and I take care of the parents. So you're a babysitter, and the parents get to have a great time. And they don't really ever get that when they're out fishing or even kayaking, because they have to take care of the kids. They can never enjoy themselves so much, or one of them does and the other one has to do it. But I can tell you, I take little nets that will scoop up little shrimp, and I try to keep them occupied as long as I can and not be bored, because by the time they get back to the car, the salt water knocks them out. And the parents just love it. And they always come back. They always come back.
Yeah. All right, well, really appreciate your time, guys. We've been real lucky to have you guys come over and sit down with us. I'd like to thank Jeff Little, Phil Spencer, Drew Gregory, and Jim Salmons for sharing some of your experiences and some of your knowledge.
More about Rapid Media's print and digital magazines, International Paddling Film Festival, on-water events, and online store. Visit rapidmedia.com.